everybody. I'm starting a new channel InCodeWeTrust, and the first video I'm going to do is technical interview tips and tricks with Swift. So my first tip would be practicing your code in Google Docs settings. So especially if you are preparing for the Google interview, and I think Facebook does it too, what is going to happen is that your interviewer is going to ask you to open up a Google document and share it with him or her, and interviewer is going to pass the problem description in there, and you're going to write your code right in your Google document in that Google document you just created, right? So it is for your own benefit to practice in these settings, because it's actually very different from the normal settings in which you write your code, right? So you like normally you write your code in IDE, and you get all those nice features where like with auto capitalizations, like background is dark, your keywords and variable names are like different colors and stuff like that. But you don't get you don't get none of it in Google document when you write your code in Google document. So it takes some time to getting used to that. So when you actually do get started with writing your code in Google document, there are a couple of things you noticed. Let's say I want to create a function. So I go like FAANG foo, it would return something, let's say an integer, and then inside of it I want to create a variable, a, assign it, and then return a. You notice a couple things right here already. Is every line gets automatically capitalized. And it is actually really annoying for you and your interviewer if you're going to go back and forth, like fixing it to a lowercase for every line. It takes up your precious interview time, which is already like very small. You only get around 25 to 30 minutes to solve one problem. So you don't want to waste any of that precious time, especially for those small things. So what you're going to do first is go to your tools, find preferences, and and uncheck all those boxes. Like it's the first one, especially the first one here, where you see automatically capitalized words and other things you actually don't need to write your code. You see here you have automatically correct spelling. You don't want that either, so you uncheck all of that and hit OK. So now, like the next line you create doesn't get auto capitalized, and it is nice. Okay, so the next thing is actually the next thing you notice actually is that those, like for example, those two lines, you see there's unnecessary space between them, and you might actually end up in a situation where like if you have like couple functions, you have problem description, maybe an image at the top, and then you start writing your code, like the whole code doesn't fit in one screen, so you have to scroll back and forth and again waste your precious interview time. You don't want that. What you can do about it is highlight your code, go to this line and paragraph spacing icon, and change a couple things here. First, you want to remove space before paragraph, and you want to remove space after paragraph. And you also can hit this single spacing. So now your code is nice and condensed, and you don't end up in a situation where you have to scroll back and forth between screens. So that's about spacing. And the next and the last thing, about Google Docs settings is you want to change your code font so it resembles code, right? You just it's pretty easy. You just highlight your text and change the font to Korean New. So now it looks as code, and I think it's more readable. Okay, so let's jump to the next one. On to the next trick, and the next thing I want to talk about is loops in Swift. So there are a couple things. The first is that let's imagine a situation you have like your array. Let's say it's contains only one integer, 0, and you want to loop through it. And for some reason, like you want to start with second index and go up until array count. Let's say this like array is passed to you, so you don't know how many elements there are, but for some reason you want to start with element at index 2, right? And in a situation like this, what you're going to end up is with fatal errors that would say range requires that your lower bound 2 is actually smaller or greater than your upper bound, in this case 1, right? So one way to avoid it would be like very straightforward, is like doing a guard, right? Guard ir count I don't know, is greater than 2. Yeah, that would be 3. So yeah, you'd have an element, and else I don't know, return something, right? But that's a little bit messy, and it's really annoying to write those kind of codes. So you another option is would be actually to do this function called stride. It's really nice that for example, you want to loop this through from to. So the first parameter is from. The second parameter is, you have two options here. Actually, you have to and you have through. And the difference is through is going to go up until your upper bound, including that upper bound, and 2 is gonna go up until, but not including the upper bound. So if you want to say 2, you're gonna go like count, and if you want to use through, you you want to use count -1. Right, so you don't end up with array out of bounds. And the last parameter is by. Any for regular loop you can use 1. Like if you want to loop through every second element, you can do 2, and you have like different options there, right? And so in a situation like this, when you have only one element, using this stride, you don't get fatal error. The thing wouldn't go inside of this for loop, and the flow will continue as expected. All right, so the next thing is looping in reverse order, actually. And we're going to use the same stride function here as well, because you have this by parameter. You can actually pass here, let's say -1, and you can go r count -1, right, through 0, for example, and that way you will loop through this r array in reverse order. So the next thing would be to look into the situation where we want to loop through the string, and we want to know every index right of it, index of the element of the string. So for the strings, you cannot just go like for I in 0 till str count. Let's say you have our str 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you cannot just go print me string at subscript I. Array just doesn't, or strings just doesn't work that way. Why? I would cover it in a different video, but it just like wouldn't compile. So what you actually can do here is you can create another variable, let's say index, and you can access a subscript element with let me remember, yeah, str.index. Here you're going to pass a starting index of str.start index and offset it by your integer value I. So now you can go ahead and here and change this I to index, and this should compile, or will compile. So, and another option for you to loop through the string is to convert it to array. Let's say you have the same str, you create another variable, you convert that string to an array like this str, and then you can easily access every element of it with a regular integer subscript, like that. So that's it for loops in Swift. Let's move to the next. Right, we got to the last part of our technical interview tips and tricks. Okay, let me say it again. Interview tips and tricks with Swift. And the next thing I want to cover is reserve capacity. Let's say we have this function get only even elements of nums, right? So what this function does is loops through this nums, check if element in nums is divisible by 2. If it is, it's going to append it to our array. So one way to optimize this code is use reserve capacity, because let's say our nums is very big. I don't know, has thousands of elements, and but we do know that in this scenario, array max the size of array is going to be at most nums count, right? Because if every element is divisible by 2, which is going to end up in array. But if some elements are not divisible by 2, they don't get appended, so the size would be smaller. So we can say actually our variable array and dot reserve capacity, and say nums that count. Yeah, so this actually like helps your compiler it doesn't have to estimate how big the R is going to be and potentially like move around R if we end up in a situation that R like allocated space for R is filled and we have to move it to another space and stuff like that. It just says that okay, you created this R, but it needs to be this big at most, and we pass that value. And bringing this point up during the interview actually gives you 3 bonus points. It shows that you care about optimization. You write like code with optimization in mind, and you know small details of your programming language of your choice. Okay, now let's move to the this constructor array repeating. It's very useful in situations where you, let's say you have your matrix, you want to traverse it, and you want to keep track of like what you visited, or maybe like how far was it, the shortest distance. I don't know, like anything, but you want it to be same size as matrix. You can assign it with some like default value, let's say integer max. You can go ahead and use this array repeating with nested array repeating, passing like correct like a number of columns and number of rows for that visit. So that's it for this constructor. Let's move on to dictionary with default values. This is very useful actually in a situation. For example, I just deleted this. As a normal way, like before I was exposed to this trick, I would write code like this. For example, I have this function foo. I want to check for every element. Like before I added it, I want to check if it's already in my dictionary, and if it is, I want to increment a counter that shows how many times I encounter that that element, right? So before I know this trick, I would do like something like this: if let count equal dictionary at element I, dictionary I. It means that the element is already in a dictionary and it has count number of times. So I would go ahead and say count +1 because I see it one more time. And then for else, I would say, okay, so we haven't seen it before, so we're gonna say dictionary element at subscript I with a key, actually, with a key I equal to 1, because this is the first time I see this element. So this is what 5 lines of code can be done in one using this treat default. I can go ahead and say dictionary element I with key I and default value 0, and I can go ahead and assign it to +1. So the first time I see it's going to default to 0 and then add 1, and the next time it sees this element, it's going to get that count and add one to it. So it's going to essentially do the same thing as before, but a lot shorter. So that's it for this trick, and let's move on to the last one. This trick is very useful if we want to use DFS and BFS. We want to traverse our graph. Let's say we have a matrix and we want to go in all 4 directions. We can use tuples here and iterate through this set. Like for example, in this case, we'll go 1 right, we'll go 1 down, we'll go 1 up, one to the left, and assign new values like this. And pay attention how this dir variable is accessed 0 and 1 because this is tuple. And then we can just go ahead and check if x is greater than or equal to 0, and x is smaller than number of like matrix. This is rows, so count, right, and stuff like that. So that's very useful for BFS and DFS. Okay, that's it for this video. If you liked it, please hit that like button, subscribe to this channel. InCodeWeTrust, I'm going to post videos of me solving lead code, essentially blind 75 problems using Swift. So if you think it's going to be useful for you, please subscribe and hit that like button. Thank you. Bye-bye.